All right. Well, hey, man, I love third service. I want to welcome all those watching online with us. Also, I'm a little loopy right now, so today's going to be good. We are jumping into a new series entitled Phygital, and Phygital stands for this. It's a combination of physical and digital. And if we just look at our life right now, isn't it true that digital has touched everything that we are or do? Even the most intimate relationships that you have become phygital. You think about it for a second. You hang out with your friends or your spouse or whatever. You have the very physical interaction with them. You talk to them face to face. But, come on, let's be honest. This little device right here is digital. You text them and FaceTime them and send them emails. It's happened in our workforce too. I mean, our jobs have become incredibly phygital, that there's aspects of our jobs that we have to physically do something. But again, we still use cell phones and laptops and iPads and send emails and things like that. And in our world, really, there's nothing that the digital has not impacted and turned what used to be just physical into phygital. And more specifically, where we're going to go today and where we're going to go this whole series is really, it's impacted in a profound and deep way our faith. And while you can look up the Wall Street Journal or whatever, and they're all talking about phygital as far as your job and your relationships, what I don't see is enough people talking about what it looks like and how it's impacting our faith. And so today, we're going to jump in and just kind of setting the stage. Today is just a different kind of a day. In fact, if you're a guest, I want to encourage you, please come next week because we're not going to jump into the Bible too much today. It's a different kind of day. We're going to start with something, but if you can imagine this series as a one long sermon, so not kind of four distinct sermons, but one long sermon that's chunked up today really is just an intro. It's just the start, and we're going to start in the book of Daniel. We're going to read one verse that is, for many ways, just kind of what I would call a throwaway verse. And the book of Daniel, if you don't know, the book of Daniel is all about this guy and the impact and the power and influence of Babylon. And if you don't know what Babylon is, Babylon's a nation. They were in power, and they took over so many different things. And Babylon, anytime you have a culture that's in power, they did what everybody else did. They would take the young men and women. They would find the best, the best. They would find the jocks, the football players, the smart kids, the ACT succeeders. They would find the best of the young people, and they would take them out of their nation. They would take them away from their parents. They would take them, and they would bring them to Babylon, this kind of home city. And in the middle of that, they would reprogram them. They would sit back and they would change their name. They would change their identity. They would change what they talked about. They would change what they ate. They would change where they go. They would change everything about them. And there's one verse that we're going to unpack today, really, that kind of is the standard for this verse. I kind of read it and I thought, man, this is where we're at as a culture. And you've probably read it before, but never thought too much about it. And it's Daniel chapter 1, verse 7. It says this: the chief official for Babylon gave them, that's the young men, new names to Daniel, the name Belshazzar. And again, you can read that and go, that's what we're talking about the whole series? Yep, right there. That's it. Because in it is something hidden. In it is something so subtle, and yet I'm going to argue today is so relevant to our culture because, while this looks kind of innocent, like who cares? Gave him a new nickname. You know, what's the big deal? Listen, the word Daniel, the name Daniel, you know what that means? It means man of God. And when his parents named him that, they were trying to communicate not just what he would be called, but more importantly, how he would relate to their God, how he would relate to other people, and how he would see himself in that relationship, which is radically important in why they named him Belshazzar. Because while Daniel means man of God, Belshazzar means woman of the king. And in that moment, when they kind of rename him that, they are doing something so subtle and so pervasive. Again, they're trying to reorganize how he saw himself. Is he devoted to the king? Is he a man or is he a woman? Does he worship Yahweh or does he follow the king? What does he do? And this name is one of the very, very subtle things that the culture, the power, the culture that's in power is subtly doing and shifting for them. And they did it in so many different ways. And can we think of a more relevant topic nowadays with transgenderism and people struggling with their identity and what do they do and what does culture's role play in that whole deal? But what I want to talk about and where I want to go is it's easy to read this and go, Nick, that's like 3,000 years old. Are you kidding me? Come on. Babylon's not real. It's no longer in power. Who cares? And I would go, yeah, you're right. Babylon is no longer a place we go to. No. Babylon is a space that comes to us. See, it's no longer Babylon the place. It's digital Babylon. And what's happened is this little device and many others like it, and we're going to talk about the phone today and technology and impacts. This little device does exactly what Babylon did years ago. It changes not what you think, because that's easy, right? It changes how you think. In fact, here's what I want you to see. It's so much easier to change what you think than how you think, right? You can change what you think like that. Like, I remember many, many years ago when I was young and naive, I used to think Android phones were good phones, right? And then I bought an iPhone. And I'm like, yeah, Android sucks, okay? Those are terrible. And in a moment, boom, that changed how I thought. What I thought, not how I thought. A few years later, I remember a friend of mine, I had never eaten a Dorito, okay? It's just crazy. I was 34 years old. I had never eaten a Dorito. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, that's wrong, Nick. Do you need to repent of something? Like, what is your deal? And so he brought me, and I was like, yeah, they got cheese. I don't like cheese. And, I'm not a big chip person and stuff like that. And I had all these excuses. And he's like, I'm going to fix that. He brought me a bag of Doritos. It was like heaven in my mouth. I was like, oh, my goodness. And in a moment, I changed what I think because and you know this, it's easy. It's easy to change what you think. It is about impossible. It is incredibly hard to change how you think. This is like several years ago. Common Core Math came out. Any of you remember that whole deal? It's a big deal. Like, people lost their crap with that. I mean, it was like nuts. There were videos online, and parents were going crazy, and they were arguing about it, and this is ridiculous, and da-da-da-da-da. Just so mad. And I remember thinking, well, I don't even really care, because I homeschool, so you all do whatever you want to do, But do you know why everybody was so just out of their mind about that? It wasn't what they thought. 4 plus 4 still equaled 8. That was not the issue. Everybody was so upset and so irate because they were changing how they thought about math. All of a sudden, it's like, no, that's not how you do that math problem. You do the math problem like this, you kind of walk through it. And Common Core Math says, no, we're going to change not what you think. Man, the answer is still the same. We're going to change how you think of it. And everybody lost it because, again, it's this principle right in here. It's so easy to change what you think than how you think, which leads to my next point, which is how you think about something is way more important than what you think about something. And again, I grew up in a culture, maybe you did too. And this is going to mess with some of you, and I get that. That's why I'm spending the whole time to set this up. Where I was told, listen, Nick, it doesn't really matter how you consume media, how you consume content. You can watch TV. It's not a big deal. Watch TV as long as the content's okay. Just watch VeggieTales, or like when I was growing up, like it was He-Man and G.I. Joe. Love those cartoons. They always had the message at the very end to kind of help you become a better human being. I never listened to that stuff. But anyway, they always had that stuff. And it really was like, just don't watch anything inappropriate. Make sure there's no nudity. Make sure there's no, kind of violence or gore, bad language. The same thing with movies. Is it a good movie? Yeah, it doesn't have anything inappropriate in it. Because I grew up in a world that was all about the content instead of the context. It was all about the message instead of the medium with which it came through. And as long as the content was okay, then it really didn't matter. But here's where I want to go today, and here's what I hope you see. The context, or the medium, is way, 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 way more important than the message. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter what you look at or what you watch. Okay, this is not an excuse for like, Pastor Nick said I can go look at porn. No, I didn't, okay? Just so we're clear. It does matter a little bit. I'm just telling you, long term though, what you think about something is not nearly as important as how you think about something. Several years ago, I was exposed to a man named Marshall McLuhan, and I would argue he's probably one of the 3 smartest people of the 20th century. He's passed away since then. He wrote a book called Understanding Media, and it's not a Christian book. This is just, he's an English professor in Canada, and he was just brilliant, smart. And he made this statement that is really going to shape our conversation and shaped me in so many different ways. And he said it this way. He said, first we shape the tools. Thereafter, they shape us. He looked at technology and he said, listen, we shape all these tools, whether it be the telegraph or the written word or pictures or phones or iPads. And this is a man who predicted Amazon.com in the 70s. He was brilliant. And he said, the problem with technology is first we shape them, but then they shape us. We shape these things to kind of help us and do some stuff, right? I mean, we shape them to kind of, man, you have this thing in your pocket. You never have to remember a thing again, right? Why? You just look it up. You know what the problem is? You never remember anything again, right? When I was younger, I could tell you so many different cell phone Not cell phones, phone numbers. I can tell you I probably shouldn't. Anyway, I still remember my phone number when I was in, grade school. I have no clue what my wife's cell phone number is right now. It's in my phone. I don't have to know it. It shapes how we think. And here's where I want to go from a technology standpoint. And again, today, our kids director said this so beautifully in a staff meeting the other day. She said, Nick, today's message is not to demonize technology, it's to prioritize it. So let me be very, very clear. I'm not against technology. I love technology. I'm kind of a tech person. I've got 2 pieces of technology up here. And this past week, I had a good friend of mine who got really sick. He almost died. And 2 pieces of technology, a cell phone and an AED saved him. Technology is incredible. Where I want to go today and with this whole series is I think that there's some underlining things that it's undoing in our lives that we're not aware of. And it's shaping not what you think. What you think is borderline, in many ways, irrelevant. It's shaping how you think. Because we become so focused on what technology has done, we've missed what it's undone. So today's message really is, I'm just going to walk through, kind of set the stage for this whole thing. I want to walk through 4 things that it's undone. 4 critical things that it's undone in your life, whether you're 14 years old or 44 years old or 104 years old. It has the potential, if you're not careful, to undo some stuff. And number 1 is this. It's the first one. It's just, it's undone the need for presence. Let me just say this to you really quickly. You need presence. You need it. You were made to be connected with other people in a meaningful way. And this has the ability to undo it, because you know the beauty of this? This device right now, at this moment actually, is connecting me to people incredibly far away. And at the same time, if I'm not careful, it will disconnect me from the person right in front of me. I mean, have you ever been sitting at lunch? I know I have. And you're like just deep in conversation. And you hear ding. And somebody goes, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Look, here's what we say. I got to get this. No, you don't. You want to. You've been conditioned. It's reshaped your brain. And your brain tells you every single time that dings, you have to answer it, you have to answer it, you have to answer it. And I always hear, like, what if it's important? It's not. But we do that. We ignore the person that has cut out time, has made a decision, drove to dinner, drove to lunch, drove to coffee, walked away from everybody else. We ignore that person that is 3 feet from us to engage with somebody who's maybe 3,000 miles away from us. And again, here's my heart. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not trying to demonize it. I'm just saying it's eroded the power, the impact, the presence. If you're a parent and you've ever been at dinner and said, put your cell phone away. Why? Because you're trying to have a connection moment. And you can recognize, maybe you've never thought about it, you're losing something here. And you can't quite put words to it. Let me help you. It's presence. There's something that happens that I can't put my finger on and I can't even articulate completely. But when you sit with somebody and they have their attention and you have their attention and you are together, something happens, and it's unique, and it cannot be mimicked with technology. Many years ago, when I was a young pastor, I struggle mightily with serious personal moments. Those are not my strength, and I know that, and I'm getting better at 44. I still struggle with those. Those are not my best moments still. And I remember the first time I was with a family and somebody died. It was a hard moment, honestly. And part of it was a hard moment because I knew it was coming. They had called me and said, hey, Pastor Nick, it was a friend of mine. It was a good friend of mine. Still to this day, a friend of mine, he said, listen, my dad's dying. Could you come to the hospital? Could you come to the place with us? And I'm like, absolutely. And I hung up the phone and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I would love to tell you that I was super spiritual. The whole time I prayed, God, please don't let him die when I get there. Please don't let him die when I get there. Please don't let him die when I get there. It's a terrible prayer as a pastor, just so we're clear, okay? Like that's not a good religious spiritual prayer because my prayers was all about me and not about them. And so I got there, and sure enough, I'm there 5 minutes, and he passes away peacefully in the presence of all of us. And I am freaking out. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I've never been trained for this. And so after probably about 30 seconds of just really losing my stuff, I just said, hey, can we pray? And I prayed probably one of the most clumsy, awkward prayers I've ever prayed in my entire life. And then I made up some excuse and just said, hey, listen, this is a very personal moment for you all. I'm really sorry for your loss. Buddy, and I said his name, I'm going to follow up with you later. And I walked out and I thought, that was the worst thing in the world. I mean, I screwed it up. And I'm sitting there and I'm leaving and we hang out a few days later at the funeral. And I'm in the back. I remember this vividly. I'm in the back. The funeral's up front and my buddy is standing back there and he looks at me and he goes, hey, Nick, just really, we talk about as a family. Thank you so much for stepping in, because I wasn't even supposed to be the one that was going to be there. It was supposed to be my head pastor, and he kind of knew. He said, thank you so much for being there. It meant the world to us. And I thought, nailed it. No, I didn't think that. No. I did think, oh, okay, well, if we're being honest, this is honest time. I'm not great at those moments, but I'm really honest. And I looked at him and said, oh, man. So that makes me feel better. I said, listen, you probably couldn't tell, but I was freaking out. And he looks at me quickly and goes, oh, no, we knew. Yeah, it was clear to everybody. And then he looks at me and he goes, actually, here's what happened. Everybody in the room felt so bad for you, we forgot about our loss. I mean, it just completely took all the attention off of our loss onto you. I was like, you're welcome, I think. And so we both kind of chuckle at that, but then he looks at me and he looks me in the eyes and he's dead serious. He said, but listen, Nick, you being there meant the world to us. Thank you. Because there's some things that only presence provides. And if I would have zoomed that in, FaceTimed that in, wouldn't have had the impact, would it? If I had a text message in the prayer, hey, here's the prayer for you guys, just read it aloud whenever you want to. There's only some things presence do. And the reason why this is important to our faith, the reason why we're talking about this is because when it comes to digital, what's happened, what I've seen as a pastor, what I've experienced is people have started saying kind of odd things and not thinking through, because it's changing, not what we think, but how we think. But like, Nick, listen, I don't need to go to church and physically, I'll watch it online. And let me be very clear, if you're watching online, so glad you're watching online. There's dozens of reasons to be watching online. You're sick, you're away, you couldn't make it in, your kids are sick. I mean, there are dozens of reasons to walk online. I don't want to watch online. I don't want to demonize online, but can I just ask a question if you're watching online right now, just really, really quickly? Are you fully present? Or are you cooking? Are you sitting there with your phone in your lap? Are you engaged in a conversation with somebody else? Are you working out? See, there's something about when you're here, it forces you to engage a little bit more. And I can't put my finger to it completely, words to it, but something happens. And you can't fake it. And it's not the same. And the irony is the people are like, Nick, it's the same thing. And then I ask them, I said, well, which do you prefer? And they're like, well, I prefer online. I'm like, gotcha. Because you can't prefer something if it's the exact same. You can give me 2 cans of Coke. Which do you prefer? I don't care. They're the exact same. If you give me a can of Coke and a Mountain Dew, I'm choosing a Mountain Dew. Why? Mountain Dew's better. It's not the same. I'm just telling you, but here's it. It fools us because it shapes not what we think, but how we think. And this is why we have small groups. It's why we come together. It's why we're connected, because something happens. It's spiritual. It's relational. And this wonderful device, and I don't want to demonize it, has eroded the power, the impact, and our need to be present with other people. It's number one. Number two, so walk through this. It's undone our ability for deep thought. We are not deep thinkers as a culture. We really aren't. And it's crazy. And the reality is, the first one we talked about just the presence, the impact of text messages. I want to talk about the impact of video. Because video does something to your brain. And again, it's not to demonize. I love video. I watch movies and TV shows. But when you watch video, it's changing not what you think, but how you think. And if you're not aware of that, what happens is we mess it up. Let me put it this way. It's created a much more ADHD brain. Maybe you've even felt that. Nick, I have a hard time focusing. I have a hard time concentrating. I have a hard time reading. I can read for about 30 seconds, and then I get bored. I get tired. I want to take a nap. It's crazy. It's hard to focus. It's hard to concentrate. But here's why. I love this, Flickering Pixels. It's another book that I read in reference to this whole deal by Shane Hips, and he says it this way. Believe it or not, the flickering mosaic of pixelated light repatterns neural pathways in the brain. These new pathways are simply opposed. That's a powerful word. They're simply opposed to the pathways required for reading, writing, and sustained concentration. You know what he's saying here? He's saying the content's irrelevant. What you're watching is irrelevant. You can be watching practice. You can be watching a how-to video. You can be watching a movie from the Avengers. It doesn't matter what you're watching. If you are engaging in video, it is rewriting neural pathways. It's not shaping what you think, but how you think. And they are opposed to reading, writing, and concentration. And I'm not trying to demonize video. I still watch movies. I still do all this stuff. But there's a difference. And so if you sit down and you're like, I'm going to spend the next 3 hours watching Notre Dame not be able to throw a pass forward and lose the game. And then I'm going to watch Alabama barely win. And then I'm going to spend 8 hours today watching a whole bunch of content, watching a whole bunch of video. Listen, there's nothing wrong with watching football. Love to watch football. Nothing wrong with watching movies. I'm just telling you right now, if you spend the majority of your time consuming media through TV, it is rewiring your brain and contrary to what you want to be. And it is making you, and here's the key word, dumber. Because it's eroding your ability to focus, to concentrate, and to go deep with things. You'd be like, that's ridiculous, Nick. Okay, cool, let me prove it to you. A couple hundred years ago, there was a man named George Whitefield. This would have been the height of the boom of the printing press, meaning they didn't have radio then, they didn't have TV then. You know what they had? They had the Bible and several other books, and they read like crazy. That's what they did for fun. All they could do is read. And when you read, much like TV, much like everything else, it does something to your brain. It rewrites your brain. Not good or bad, it's morally neutral, but it will rewrite your brain from left to right, linear, logical, premise upon premise upon premise upon premise, through a very, very deep thought thing, and you will come to conclusions. That's good in some ways, it's bad in some ways, because maybe you've read people that are book nerds and they should watch a movie. You're like, you should get out more. You know, like you looked at them like they have no interpersonal skills. Okay, all they do is read, okay? There's some negative aspects of that, but people read, and they were logical, and I would argue they're probably smarter. I watch too much TV, okay? It's right there. They're probably smarter. It's a man named George Whitefield. He was one of the men for the Reformation of the church. And I say that to say this. His sermons were preached to average, ordinary men and women, not to scholars, not to college graduates, just to average Joes walking down the street. And I want to read you the title, not the content, the title. Today's title is called Digital Babylon. It's pretty simple. Let me read you the title to his sermon that he preached that changed the nation, that hundreds and thousands of people kind of resonated with. Here it is. A preservative against unsettled notions and want of principles in regard to righteousness and Christian perfection. How many people want me to preach that sermon next week? Yeah. How many people know even what that means? They thought differently. They process information differently. And it had nothing to do with what they thought. They were Christians, maybe like you. They believed in God, maybe like you. It had nothing to do with what they thought. It has everything to do with how they thought. And the problem is this. We have a technology that we just unintentionally consume media in a way, and there's nothing wrong with it, and I don't want you to feel bad. You just need to be aware. It's not shaping just what you think. It's shaping how you think. And the bottom line is this. If you continue down your path, here's where it comes in your faith. Here's why it's so important. Here's why I'm preaching on this. It's because I run into people and they struggle with their faith. They're like, Nick, I want a better relationship with God. I want to be able to teach people. I want to walk with God. I want to know what to do. I want to know God's will. Like, what do I do? And I always say that every time, you should read your Bible more. And they're like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm not a reader. I get bored reading. I'm like, I know you do. You've conditioned your brain, but here's the danger, and here's why this is so important. Do you know what God gave you? He didn't give you a video. He gave you a book, actually a collection of books. And he said, you want to know me? Read this. And the reason why we're doing this series and the reason why this is important is because unintentionally you may be conditioning your brain to be in a position that you can't read this. The single greatest gift outside of Jesus that God could give you is his written word to help change and shape your mind, you can't do. And it's not because you don't love God, and it's not because you don't care. It's because you just spend hours watching video, unaware of what it does, not to what you think, but to how you think. All right, third one is this. It's undone our priority for the inner world. We've talked extensively about video. We've talked about technology and a presence as far as connection. I want to talk about images and what images do, because there's videos, but there's also images. I mean, maybe you're sitting here going, Nick, I don't watch a lot of YouTube. I don't watch a lot of video. But I want to talk about the impact and the power of social media, Instagram, images, because images do something different, right? Images speak to us differently. They in fact engage a different part of our brain. When you consume images, it's engaging a part of your brain that's not normally engaged at all with text. In fact, I could do it this way. I could put this up here. That will engage the intellectual aspect. The boy is sad. It's a statement. You might be wondering why. You might be having very intellectual conversations about that. But if I do this, the boy is sad. It's just a different part of your brain. Do you know why this boy is getting this thing right here? Somebody told me this. Because not only is his father dead, but his mother's dead also. The boy is sad. I can say it with text, or I can show you. And if I say it with text, it will engage the thinking part of your brain. But if I show you images, it engages the feeling part of your brain, which is not bad or good. It just is. But this is why it's important. This is why we're talking about this. Because if you spend all of your time engaging in the images, engaging in your feelings, what happens is feelings become more important. And the problem with social media, the problem with Instagram is, isn't it true? All of your friends and all the people that you follow, they spend all their time curating perfect pictures of what they want you to think their life is. And so it's like, man, look at the picture of the vacation. You're like, oh, I wish I had that. Not understanding that they're going to get a divorce when they get back home. They can't stand each other. They actually have separate rooms. You see pictures of athletes or supermodels going, man, I wish I looked like that, not understanding that she's bulimic and he's on roids and going to die early because of what he's doing to his body. What images and specifically social media do is they highlight the outer world, the external world, what we see, and it puts an inordinate emphasis on the external stuff to the detriment of the inner world. And if you think I'm making this up, Instagram themselves, not an external firm, not somebody's opinion, Instagram did an internal study of their effects of people. You can look this up online. It's pretty easy. Just look up Instagram report. You'll find it. Here's what Instagram said about their own devices. Here we go. Here's a quote. We, Instagram, make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls. And teens blame Instagram for increases in the rate of anxiety and depression. This reaction was unprompted and consistent across all groups. That last line is important because here's what they're saying. The content was irrelevant. Didn't matter what you were looking at. You could be looking at weightlifting videos. You could be looking at CrossFit. You could be looking at shoes. You could be looking at shopping. It doesn't matter. It was across all groups. What you were looking at is irrelevant because what is irrelevant? How? They're basically saying if you spend time looking at our stuff, it will change how you think. And how you think will have an inordinate focus on external things, not internal things, which is why stress and anxiety go up. Every now and then somebody look at me and be like, Nick, I'm really struggling with anxiety. I'm like, yeah, turn the news off. They're like, well, that's a dumb idea. I'm not doing that. Okay. Quit looking at social media before you go to bed. Well, that's an even stupider idea. What else you got? I'm like, I'm out. That's all I got. I got 2 things. That's it. But I spent time reading the Bible, and again, I'm being a little bit silly right now, but Jesus actually, when he talks about what you need in life and what should be your priority, there's never a moment where he's like, you should have big biceps and ripped abs. It's not a verse in there. There's not a verse. Paul writes quite a bit of the New Testament. There's not a verse that says, ladies, you should be wearing these kind of outfits and have this kind of shoes and have this kind of home. There's none of that stuff. In fact, Paul writes and says, do you know what you will look like, what the benefits, what the fruit of the spirit of following Jesus versus following Instagram will be? He writes it out for you. He says this right here. He says, you're going to have more peace, joy, love, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And you know what the crazy part is? I have never met anybody who's like, Nick, I have way too much peace in my life. Could you help me with some chaos? I'm just way too peaceful. I walk around, I've got too much joy. I'm way too happy. Like, could you just make it worse? Like, just kind of do some. I never run into those people. I run into people and go, man, how do you get this? And yet the craziest part is this. Many of you in here right now would say, yeah, I wish I was less stressed. I have way too much anxiety. I need to be more kind. I'm kind of a jerk. I'm kind of rude. And yet, you're going to walk out today. You're going to pick up your social media again. And you're going to spend a half an hour to an hour looking at pictures. Undoing everything God's trying to do in and through you. Because it shapes not what you think, but how you think. And as long as you believe the lie, as long as the content's not bad, as long as everything's okay, as long as it's not inappropriate, what's the big deal? Oh, it's a huge deal. Because Babylon will play the long game with you. That culture and power, it's going to change you, but it's going to focus on changing how you think, not what you think, because it's so easy to change what you think. It's really, really hard once it gets you to change how you think. And so we spend all of our time doing it. All right, last one is this. As we walk through this, it's undone the benefits of being bored. Being bored. To which maybe you're thinking, like, that's not a benefit, Nick. Boredom is like, I try to avoid that at all costs. And I know, I get it. Like for me personally, and I'll just tell you, I've spent some time, Lisa and I've talked a little bit about this, just prepping for this. You know how bad I am, and this is just so you don't think that I'm, pointing fingers. I'm pointing fingers at me. A lot of this is just coming from me. You know how bad I am at being bored? I've got a little bitty thing for my phone. It sits right there. If I stop at a stoplight, I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. Okay, what's going on? And then when the light's green, the dude behind me, he needs more Jesus and gentleness and rudeness. He honks at me. I'm like, dude, you need to get saved. Like, what's your problem? Relax. But that's how crazy it is. That's how much I've shaped my brain and how much I reject boredom. And maybe for you, it's different. Maybe it's every time you're in the line waiting to purchase something. You pull out your phone. Why? Because you can't stand to be bored. Maybe, have you ever found yourself, this is the most fascinating for me, have you ever found yourself watching TV, watching a movie that you've never seen, and yet you still have your phone out playing a game or doing something else? Because you need to be engaged during the boring parts of the TV show that you've never seen and watched before. Because we have conditioned ourselves to not be bored. And these devices, listen, they're gifts. They're incredible. I'm not trying to demonize them in any way at all. I'm just telling you, there's some unintended consequences because here's the deal. Here are the benefits. These are legitimate scientific benefits of being bored. Number one, you're more creative. Number two, it slows your mind down. That's important because, again, I run into people. I can't sleep well. Why can't you sleep well? Well, by the time my head hits the pillow, Nick, like my mind is racing. I'm like, I looked at somebody. I was like, hey, put your phone down for like a half an hour before you go to bed. Well, that's ridiculous. Okay. Slows your mind down. You're more productive. You're able to reflect more. Because you're able to reflect more, you're more altruistic or you're a better person in life. And maybe the most important thing, you're better at goal setting. Do you know why? Because probably almost everybody in here, doesn't matter how old you are, there's something in your life that you don't like. You have a habit, you have a relationship, you have a thing that you don't like. But as long as you don't have to ever reflect and think about it, as long as you never pause long enough to sit back and go, how will I fix that? And what do I need to do differently? And what does it look like? You're going to stay stuck there. If you can allow yourself to be bored, who knows? Who knows? Maybe God's going to speak to you. So if you read the scripture, the implication of our faith in this whole deal is you read it, God speaks to us. He's speaking all the time, but the reality is he's not speaking loudly. It's the small whispers. It's the gentle voice. And part of culture's goal is to constantly be loud in your ear, constantly be speaking into it, so much so that I know people that can't even go to sleep without the news on. Why? Because they constantly need somebody else telling them what to think about and what to process. Because their brains have been so conditioned that they don't want to be alone with their own thoughts. Because how we consume media changes not what we think, but how we think, and more specifically as we unpack it. That's another one that combines with this, and it's dopamine. And dopamine's powerful. Dopamine this is the one that listen, if you're especially if you just need to lean in on this one. This is a little geeky, but here's the power of dopamine. Dopamine's a drug that goes off, and it's your desire drug. It's your drive drug. Oxytocin and endorphins, they go off, they're the reward. So when you do something you should do or, brings pleasure or whatever, it goes off afterward. Dopamine drives you to do it. Dopamine's the drug that goes off if you've ever done a long hike and you're almost done, you get that kind of second wind. You know what I'm talking about? Like you're 100 feet left and you get that second wind. That's your dopamine drug. Dopamine's the drug that goes off in a new relationship because it's the drug of possibility. It's the drug of hey, this could happen and this could happen. It drives us to do something new and different. And so in a new relationship, dopamine goes off pretty regularly. It's why you're high as a kite. We've talked about that in our LSD sermons. Here's why this is important. Here's why dopamine's tied to boredom and why you really should pay attention to this last part. If you get nothing else, you really need to engage this last part. Because on an average time, maybe about right now, you're getting about 5 hits a second of dopamine. That's baseline for everybody, which means nothing to you. But if you feel okay, you're getting 5 hits. If you feel bad, you're hitting 0. And you'll do anything to get past 0, which is why dopamine is so important for temptation and overcoming stuff. Addicts have a very low dopamine level. And because it's part of their tension of they can't get past it because they're at 0, not at 5. But if you're normal right now, you're at 5. When you engage dopamine in a potential new thing. And when I say new thing, you're excited about what's next. So an example would be TikTok. TikTok Reels. You put them up here, Instagram Reels, and you go, I wonder what's next. And you just, every 5 seconds, dopamine is hitting. And it's not hitting at 5 hits a second, it's hitting 20 to 30 hits a second, which in of itself for a few moments is not a problem. But can I be honest? I talk to so many people who say, yeah, Nick, I don't look at TikTok for 30 seconds. It's like 1, 2, skip a few, and a few hours. That's what happens, right? And so this is really, really important. If you spend 2 hours looking at this at 30 hits a second, you are depleting, and I mean depleting, your level of dopamine, because you were not made to experience life like that. You were not made to have that go off in your brain. And the reason that there are so many, and I'm going to pick a little bit on young men and women who have no drive, is they're depleted. It's because no one's ever cared about them enough to tell them, you should be bored. Don't believe the myth. Don't believe the lie that as long as what you're looking at's okay, it's not a big deal. No. It is destroying your brain. It is messing with you in a way you never thought. Now, you might blow me off and sit back and go, Nick, hey, whatever. I disagree with you, cool. I want to show you a video. A video of somebody who's TikTok famous. And when I say famous, you might think I'm kind of TikTok famous. No, you're not. He is. He has 22 million followers. That's a lot. He makes his income probably from this. He's a big deal. I've talked to a few people that are like, oh yeah, I know that guy, He quit at the height of his popularity 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, he did a video. And what I want you to see and why I want you to see this is he's gonna put experience to words that I'm saying. He's going to tell you what he has experienced, he's seen. He doesn't have the neurochemical aspects that we're talking about from the books that I read, because I read kind of geeky books and weird stuff like that. He doesn't have any of that. No. He's just an expert in experience because he is famous and he's done it for a while. And I want you to just take a second and just listen to his tension with TikTok.
And lastly, take care of your mental health. Okay? I would argue that your mental health needs more care than your physical health. There's no way in hell that we are designed to swipe our finger and laugh at a video, and then swipe our finger and watch someone's journey of dying from terminal cancer and spending their last few moments on earth, and then cry with them, and then swipe our finger, and then feel all fuzzy inside because of a cat video that we see, and then swipe our finger and then laugh at something, and then swipe our finger and then cry. There's no way anybody in this entire world could convince me that this is something that's normal and something that is not going to affect us. So take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. Talk to somebody. Go touch some grass. Read a book.
It's crazy. He's not religious as far as I know. I don't know anything about his faith background. Doesn't say anything about spiritual. He just says, man, I can feel it. It's changing you. It's shaping you. And again, if you want that, God bless. I'm not trying to demonize it. I just need you to understand that it's not shaping just what you think. There's a lie that says as long as the content's okay, the context doesn't matter. No. It's changing you in ways that you're not even aware of. And I think it's fascinating. I didn't plan it this way, and I didn't even notice it until second service, but I think it's his 3 things that he said. Get outside, touch some grass. That's a new thing for dopamine. Go talk to somebody. That's presence. Read a book. That's going deeper. He actually brings out 3 of the other things that we've talked about today because he says, listen, he recognizes, he doesn't have the science that we do. It's changing us. It's affecting our faith. Is it any wonder why we have a generation who bases all their decisions on feelings when they've been raised with images that engage only their feelings? Is it any wonder that we have a generation that feels so disconnected, even though they're connected to more people than they've ever been? I run into so many younger men and women. They're like, man, I just don't have any real friends. I feel so disconnected. I feel so messed up, Nick. I have such high anxiety. I have such high stress. This generation, especially the younger, they have more stress. They're more disconnected. Why? These things, they are wonderful in the right context. They're terrible in the wrong. And they're shaping us, good or bad. They're shaping us. And so as we wrap it up, again, today is all about creating tension. I have a lot of answers. We will in the next series. The whole series is built on how do you undo this? What does this look like to walk with this? How do we walk through a world that's digital Babylon, that seems to be coming for us, coming to take over, that changes? How do we walk through this? But as we wrap it up, I want to give you 3 questions. Just kind of think through this week. Number 1 is this. Are there some moments where you need to be more present? Maybe at lunch or dinner. Maybe if you're married or with somebody, maybe don't just sit and scroll through the phone right before you go to bed. As you sit inches apart and yet mentally miles apart. Is there some place or some person that you need to acknowledge, I need to be more present? When I'm sitting with them, maybe it's with your kids, I'm not going to put my phone away. I'm not even going to put it in my pocket. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to walk in, and we're going to have a conversation. I don't know. Number 2. Do you find it hard to read the Bible? And if so, are you willing to do the hard work to reprogram your brain? Are you willing to sit back and go, no, I know I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be bored, it's not going to be engaging. You got all these issues because of how your brain functions. Are you willing to sit down and go, no, but this is the greatest gift God has given me outside of Jesus. So you know what? I'm going to do the work. I program my brain one way, I'm going to reprogram it a different way. And the last one is this. Are you willing to fight boredom for the sake of your brain? Because you know what's going to happen? It's going to be so awesome. You're going to walk out of here, and within probably an hour, something's going to happen and you're going to be bored. You're going to be at a stoplight. You're going to be buying something. You're going to go to the bathroom. Do you know people take this to the bathroom? That's gross. Stop it. I know some of you are thinking, that's not gross. Cool. I want you to remember it's not gross. The next time your friend goes, hey, look at this, and you grab their phone. That's all I'm going to say, okay? It's gross. But you're going to be tempted to go, I'm just going to the bathroom. I'm just going to take my phone with me. Listen, are you willing to fight boredom for the development of your brain? And if you have kids, this one's even harder. Are you willing to fight them and their boredom for the sake of their brain? Because way more important than for you, kids get bored and go, hey, can I have your phone? Kids are outside. It's like, okay, just shut up, you know. Kids are struggling. Can I play the Xbox? Okay, yeah, I'm done playing the Xbox. Can I watch a TV show? I'm done. Can I play on my Kindle? Can I do da 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 da? I just want to look at it and be like, are you kidding me? I sat in a station wagon for 13 hours. We drove to California. You know what I had? A window. Suck it up, you know. Like I had a window and a bird, you know. Like none of that's true, by the way, but my kids don't know that. So anyway. But it's right. Like you've got to be willing. If you're a parent, can I just beg with you? Fight for your kids' boredom. Fight. Let them be bored. It'll be a fight because they're going to be mad, okay? They're going to come at you. They're going to cry. It's going to be awkward. Fight for your kids' boredom. There is way more at stake, and you will either have the fight today for them or they will be fighting a battle potentially for the rest of their life mentally that they never asked for, that you just let happen because you didn't want to hear them cry. because you didn't want to engage in them, because you didn't want to fix it. You didn't want to fight for it. I'm telling you, there's way more happening. And again, nothing wrong with phones, nothing wrong with technology. We're going to unpack some of it in the rest of the series, but there are some things that it has unintentionally undone when it comes to our faith and it comes to interacting with each other. So I hope you join us next week as we continue our series, Vigilant. Would you stand with me as we pray? God, thank you for this day. Thank you for this time. I pray that you would bless and make it clear what areas of our life that we need to adjust, where we need to not demonize but reprioritize some stuff, whether it's presence or reading or engaging with people or fighting off boredom. God, help us. Help us be who you call us to be. We love you. We thank you. Amen. Have a great week. Hope to see you next week, week 2 of Digital.
Jesus, your name is power.